Good morning. I'm Linda Callahan, and I'm a member of the Board of Trustees of the Unitarian Universalist Society of Amherst. I use she, her pronouns. Welcome to you, old friends and new, young and old, in the Zoom and in the sanctuary. You are an essential part of our celebration today. Whether today is your first or your 1,000th Sunday in our midst, we are stronger because you are with us. We are one people of many beliefs, many origins, sexualities, and genders. We are all growing, all learning, all loved. Just as you are welcome here. As part of our effort to seek feedback on the governance of our congregation, you are invited to join us during the first 15 minutes of any regular meeting of the board, or chatting with us during the social hour, or by using the email address board@uusocietyamherst.org. We are grateful to be in community with you. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Andrew Coate. I am the Director of Religious Education here at the Unitarian Universalist Society of Amherst, and one of this morning's worship leaders. I use he, him pronouns. This morning, we're going to be talking about finding joy in the simple things, the small places. So whether for you that is seeing spring truly begin to bloom around you, or perhaps you, like the rest of my friends, have recently found and joined the Altered Moments Facebook group. Can I get my slide? So people take precious moments figurines and they alter them. Right? It's so good. Okay, you can go back to my other one now. I was so excited to work that in somehow. Whatever is bringing you joy right now, no matter how small it is in comparison to everything else happening, I invite you to go there. And for some of us right now, it might be hard to go to that place of joy. I know that trying to write a sermon on joy this week was a lot harder than I anticipated when I picked the sermon topic in January. But I invite you to let the part of your body that is joy-seeking have this time. The world will still be there after service. For now, there is nowhere else you have to be, nothing else you have to do. While our local COVID numbers are lower, masks are optional in the sanctuary. We ask you to reserve the balcony section near the windows for those who are wearing masks.
Try again. Good morning. My name is Allison Bull, and I'm a member of this congregation and this morning's worship associate. I use she, her pronouns. I call us to worship this morning with a poem by Mary Oliver. Mindful. Every day, I see or hear something that more or less kills me with delight, that leaves me like a needle in the haystack of light. It was what I was born for, to look, to listen, to lose myself inside this soft world, to instruct myself over and over in joy and acclamation. Nor am I talking about the exceptional, the fearful, the dreadful, or the very extravagant, but of the ordinary, the common, the very drab, the daily presentations. Oh, good scholar, I say to myself, how can you help but grow wise with such teachings as these? The untrimmable light of the world, the ocean's shine, the prayers that are made out of grass.
religious education, which means that we are having childcare downstairs, but there are not religious education classes happening. So if there's anyone in here who is not interested in hearing my very exciting sermon, it's under like the age of 12, after the time for all ages, I'll invite you to go downstairs. However, everyone is welcome to stay up here, so I am going to leave that up to you. If any children would like to come forward, you're welcome to, but there are no visuals for this story. So, once upon a time, there was this king, and he wanted to find out how the people in his kingdom thought of him. So he dressed up in beggar's clothing, and he went town to town to learn what they thought. One small town that he came to was all dark, except for light that streamed out of one small house. He looked through the window, and he saw an old man and an old woman, and they were laughing and eating. What made them so happy, he thought. This house is nothing to be proud of. That food is nothing special. And so he barged into their house, and he said, "What makes you so happy?" The old man said, "Well, we have someone who takes care of us." "Who is it? Your children?" "We don't have any children," said the old man. "Perhaps it is me," thought the king. "Is it the king?" he asked. "No," laughed the old man. "It is God. And whenever anything goes wrong, we close our eyes and we pray and think and we find out the answer." "What do you do for a living?" asked the king. "I am a shoemaker," said the old man. The king left, but thought to himself, "I will teach them who takes care of people in this kingdom." And the next day, the old man arrived in town, and there was a proclamation. Shoemaking is now illegal in this kingdom. "What am I going to do?" thought the old man. "I don't even have enough money for today." And so he closed his eyes and prayed and thought, and when he opened them, he knew what to do. He saw some water carriers. He went to them and said, "Could I be a water carrier?" And they said, "Sure, but you're going to need a bucket." So he sold his shoemaking equipment and bought a bucket, and he spent that day carrying water. And that night, the old man and the old woman spent the evening laughing and eating, and the king, spying on them, said again, "This time I'll teach them a lesson." The next day, the old man walked into town with his bucket, and there was a proclamation. Water carrying is now illegal in the kingdom. "What am I going to do?" thought the old man. "I don't have enough money even for today." And so he closed his eyes and he prayed and he thought, and when he opened them, he heard something, and he knew what he was going to do. He saw some wood choppers, and he went to them and said, "Can I be a wood chopper?" And they said, "Sure, all you need is an axe." And so the old man sold his water bucket, and he bought an axe, and he spent the day chopping wood. And that night, the old man and the old woman laughed and ate together. And the king said to himself, "Oh, he got me this time, but I'll really teach them a lesson tomorrow." And the next day, there was a proclamation, but it didn't say what you think. All wood choppers must now become guards for the king. Now, at first, this seemed like a pretty good deal. He received a beautiful uniform, a sword with a wooden handle and a silver blade that he kept in a scabbard at his side. And when the sword was in the scabbard, only the handle could be seen. But he knew it was there. Turned out being a guard wasn't so good. He spent all day walking back and forth in front of the palace. It was very boring because, you see, there were more wood choppers than the king needed guards. At the end of his shift, he went to the head guard and asked for his salary. The head guard told him that he would be paid at the end of the month. The end of the month? But he didn't have even enough money for today. And so he closed his eyes and he prayed and he thought, and when he opened them, he had no idea what he was going to do. So he went home. He told his wife the story. She closed her eyes and she prayed and she thought, and when she opened them, she said, I have a plan. So she told her plan to her husband, and he went outside and chopped down a branch from a tree in front of their house, and he carved out of it a wooden sword, and he put it in his scabbard with just the handle showing. And then he took the silver sword and sold it for enough money to let them get by for that month. That night, when the king came by in disguise, he said, now I've got them. Now I've really got them. The next day, the old man arrived in town, and there was no proclamation. So he spent the morning walking back and forth in front of the palace. And then suddenly there was this terrible commotion. A little boy had stolen an apple from the cart in the market. He'd been caught, and the head guard took the little boy and threw him at the old man's feet and said, deal with him. Well, the old man didn't know what to do. He didn't want to harm the little boy. Plus, he knew if he pulled out his sword, well, he would get in trouble too. He'd sold his sword. The crowd started to gather, and they were angry. They started shouting, why are you hurting this boy? What kind of king do we have anyway? Who here is advising this king? The old man was stuck. And so he closed his eyes, and he prayed, and he thought. And when he opened them, he raised his hand to quiet the crowd, and he said, if this boy deserves to be punished, let me pull out my sword. But if he deserves to go free, let me pull out my sword, and it will be made of nothing but wood. The crowd gasped, and they started to laugh. And among them was the king, and he was laughing too. He was in disguise with the crowd, and he realized the old man was very wise. The king pardoned the little boy, and he made the old man his advisor. And for many nights after that, you might find the king sitting at home with the old man and the old woman, laughing and eating and giving thanks.
This is a reading by Annie Dillard from her experience with the 1979 solar eclipse. Less than 2 minutes later, when the sun emerged, the trailing edge of the shadow cone sped away. It coursed down our hill and raced eastward over the plain, faster than the eye could believe. It swept over the plain and dropped over the planet's rim in a twinkling. It had clobbered us, and now it roared away. We blinked in the light. It was as though an enormous, loping god in the sky had reached down and slapped the Earth's face. When the sun appeared as a blinding bead on the ring's side, the eclipse was over. The black lens cover appeared again, backlit, and slid away. At once, the yellow light made the sky blue again. The black lid dissolved and vanished. The real world began there. I remember now. We all hurried away. We were born and bored at a stroke. We rushed down the hill. We found our car. We saw the other people streaming down the hillsides. We joined the highway traffic and drove away. We never looked back. It was a general vamoose, and an odd one, for when we left the hill, the sun was still partially eclipsed. A sight rare enough, and one which, in itself, we would probably have driven 5 hours to see. But enough is enough. One turns at last even from glory itself with a sigh of relief. From the depths of mystery, and even from the heights of splendor, we bounce back and hurry for the latitudes of home.
So, as a conservative estimate, my family owned approximately 54,000 Bradford Exchange collector's plates growing up. I need to get a read of the room, and this is actually part of my sermon. Who here knows what I'm talking about when I say Bradford Exchange collector's plates? Okay, we have a couple. Friends, let us begin. Because a bit over 50 years ago, the Bradford Gallery of Collector's Plates was formed. And let me tell you, my grandmother's life changed forever. Because now her life was going to have decorative plates. And so would my mother's, and mine. So for those unfortunate few of you not familiar with the world of collector's plates, it's just like collecting anything else, and yet it is much, much weirder. Bradford Exchange was not the only producer of these collector's plates, but they were far and away the largest. And let me tell you, you could get a plate depicting pretty much anything you could think of. And so I've collected just a small sample of the vast array of plates that they've made over the last half century. So we have the Princess Diana plates. These are all as collections, by the way. They are time limited. Sometimes, if they're popular, there's a second run. Next, we have the Russian Tales collection depicting famous Russian folk tales. And then the Wizard of Oz. Probably what they are most known for are the flowers. There are so many Bradford collector's plates with flowers. Also, there's the Santa. He's having a soda. It says so in the description. These plates are emphatically not for eating. Now, for some of these plates, that was obvious, because many of them are actually made in relief. They're like sculptures. So with it not being a plate with a printed image, but a round wall hanging with a bird of paradise or a Winnie the Pooh head sticking out of it, you might be getting the impression I am not overly fond of Bradford Exchange collector's plates. And that is not strictly true. As a child, I utterly detested them. In 6th grade, I had to write a persuasive essay, and I picked the erudite topic, decorative plates are useless. I really had it out for these things from about ages 9 to 14. I just couldn't get over how silly I thought they were. It's a plate, but you can't eat off of it. Half the time, there's weird stuff poking out of it. And in order to hang it on the wall, which is what you were supposed to do, you had to get these little metal hooks. And they were attached to springs. And then you had to get them around the edge of the plate. And these hooks were like 10 for $1. So they were not well made. And so, like 30% of the time, one of the hooks comes detached. And then like another 20% of the time, one of the springs snaps. And then you stab yourself in the finger with a little spring thing. Did not enjoy this. Also, I said many times, why don't you just cut the picture out of the catalog and hang that on your wall because it serves the same purpose? It's a fake plate, Grandma. The paint used in them was explicitly not food safe. Why even call it a plate at that point? So you might be sitting there thinking, we are over 400 words into this and we still are on why he doesn't like decorative plates. True. Because I want you to understand, I really had a admittedly unnatural amount of animosity toward these plates. Even once I stopped sharing my decorative plate hatred quite so often, I still didn't think highly of them. And then my grandparents started passing away. My grandma Millie passed when I was 12, my grandpa Woody when I was 18, my grandpa Bill when I was 22. But plate grandma, she's still around. She's moved a couple of times. She lives in a very small place now. She doesn't have most of the things that she collected over her life. She doesn't have the rose garden that she took pride in, or her full kitchen, which she really enjoyed even though she was a terrible cook, which I can say because she absolutely cannot use Zoom to watch this. I'll send her the link later. She doesn't have her big television or her weird clock collection, which she always turned all of the sounds on for. Looking back, she had a somewhat ridiculous number of motion-activated household tchotchkes. So like things that lit up when you walked by them, or frogs that ribbited, or there were some flowers that moved. She had multiple big mouth Billy Basses. But she didn't have those anymore. Not sure what happened to them, but I have a feeling that there was some careful culling when she moved out. And she didn't have her plates. My grandmother can find it hard to talk on the phone now. She stopped speaking English a few years ago, so all of our communication is in Spanish. And sometimes she just completely loses her train of thought. Often when this happens, I'll ask her questions about her dog, the weather, something that she is comfortable talking about. I'm really the only grandkid who talks to her at this point because I'm the only one who ever learned Spanish fluently. And so she shares a lot with me. And a few weeks before Christmas, I asked her if she was going to do any decorating. And she brought up missing her plates. And so, to the utter betrayal of 11-year-old me, I searched for Bradford Exchange to see if it even still existed. It does. I was going to do it. I was going to order a decorative plate. And then I saw they were like $50 a piece. And so I got one on eBay for $12. It was that one. It is a genuine, they made sure to tell me, Lena Lou for Bradford Exchange second issue amethyst jewels. I had it mailed to my grandmother. She was so happy. She called me, and she called my dad. My dad, by the way, is her ex-son-in-law. She went and she showed it to one of her neighbors. And then she asked the handyman at the little assisted living place to put in a nail so she could hang it up. And then she made him put the hooks on it. This is not the first time that I've gotten my grandmother a present. But far and away, even including anything I might have made in school that she pretended she liked a lot, this was the most successful. It's definitely the one that brought her the most joy. It has been hard to find the sustaining moments of joy for me lately. I am sure it has been hard for some of you. Like, I wrote most of this service on some pretty high-test antibiotics in my bed with a heating pad. It has not been my most joyful week. But these are the times when I actually find it necessary to seek out those tiny bits of joy. Life can be rough. But the other day, as I was driving home, I realized that I had a couple of hours before the kids were going to be out of school. And so I stopped by the gorge, and I stuck my feet in the water, which, by the way, was not that warm yet. And it was this moment of, wow, that's cold, and also pure joy. I had nowhere else to be, nothing else to do. The rest of my day was empty, except for bedtime with my kids, and my feet were in the wild water for the first time this year. Joy almost feels too simplistic. It's easy to say, oh, well, look for the joy. It's like when someone tells you to do yoga for your depression. But sometimes you just have to push the cynicism away a little bit and let the joy hang out for a little bit. So I, too, went to Vermont last Monday to watch the solar eclipse. We actually went on Sunday because during the 2017 solar eclipse, I informed my best friend that we would be driving to Vermont in 2024 with all of our children. And so we rented that Airbnb almost 2 years ago. And so on Monday afternoon, I got to hang out with what turned out to be 9 children and 6 other adults as we watched one of the coolest things that I have ever seen. And then the next day, driving home, we stopped at a gas station for snacks, and the kids learned about these machines that will make you a milkshake. And then when we got home, I asked my kids, what was your favorite part? The older one knew enough to lie, but the younger 2 were like, the milkshake machine. You get to pick a cup out of the special freezer, and then you get to put it in the machine, and you push a button, and it lifts it up. And that's it spins it, but that's pretty much it. Like, kids don't even really like milkshakes that much. Best part of the entire trip. My 4-year-old went to preschool the next day, and this kid is just learning to write, wrote the longest sentence they've ever written. I used a milkshake machine. Not a word about the eclipse. In a couple of weeks, we're going to celebrate Beltane here. It's that time of frivolity and joy. It's a celebration of the natural world, but also a time to look for growth and change. What was planted in you over the winter that you can now nourish, grow, and enjoy the harvest of? What can you wish the protection of those sacred fires that we kindle at this time, whether literal or figurative, as we move towards summer? The cycles that we live out in our lives require the joy, the fun, the silly, the wild, the sexy, the exuberant, along with all of the other emotions that we live through, as the year grows and dies and grows again. Now, this is, of course, not at all unique to Unitarian Universalists or people in this room. In the Hindu philosophy, there's the concept of ananda, or bliss, and it's the inherent joy that resides in each of us. It's the state of being that transcends fleeting pleasures, rooted instead in a deep connection to the eternal essence of existence. Through mindfulness and spiritual practice, individuals are invited to cultivate a sense of joy that is resilient and boundless. In Buddhism, there's the practice of mudita, sympathetic joy. It teaches us to take delight in the happiness of others. By rejoicing in the success and well-being of our fellow beings, we foster a sense of interconnectedness and compassion. It's a reminder that true joy is not diminished by the happiness of others, but rather magnified through shared celebration. Which sounds great. Those are two very interesting things that I learned on Wikipedia. But how do we cultivate this joy in our own lives? Amidst the challenges and the complexities, for me, I go back to the things I know. I go back to the earth. I let that wild water flow past my skin. I walked barefoot across warm grass. I let my body feel the stones solid and holding me stable. Maybe the earth is it for you too. Maybe it's something else entirely. I also enjoy knitting. I have been knitting for a long time, and I have learned a few things about myself. I do not like making useful objects. I will occasionally make socks, but there are two of them, and so it can be a problem. Yes, I do know about the magic loop method, Robin. I saw the look. I like making tchotchkes. So at the beginning of the pandemic, I made somewhere around 50 or 60 little 5-inch tall gnomes that I then sent out to friends across the state because what am I going to do with 50 gnomes? A couple years after that, I decided that I was going to knit a miniature sweater ornament, and I meant to put a picture of this in, but you can find me afterwards because I have a lot of pictures of these. And I was going to send one to everyone on our holiday card list, which did not happen. But I did send them out to some friends. Most recently, it has been the emotional support chickens. This is a pattern that went viral in the world of knitting, so not actually viral, but a lot of people saw it. I see some nods of acknowledgement. So the thing with knitting tchotchkes, like collecting Bradford exchange plates, there's not really much to do with them. And so I give them away. I do not sell my knitting because I find that stressful and annoying, and also people then start asking for things. And so I'm wondering who here would like a chicken? You ready? No, I'm not actually going to throw it. You can come get it, though. So maybe it's weird knitted things for you. Maybe it is going on a long walk, watching a new grandchild learn to crawl, seeing that you have finally defeated your arch nemesis, the woodchuck in your garden. One of my friends has been having a well-documented fight with a woodchuck for at least 12 years. Pretty sure woodchucks don't live that long. Maybe it is as simple as finding the perfect sticker that completely encompasses your identities for your water bottle. It doesn't have to be big, but it does require some amount of willingness to let go of cynicism and doubt, to embrace that transformative power of hope and optimism. And so for me, it's through this sometimes very small lens of positivity that I'm able to recognize at least the potential for joy. And sometimes even that feels like a little bit too much. Just like how I was never going to Marie Kondo my house, look at every object, thank it for its service, and let it go. It was not going to happen. Letting go of that cynicism is hard. And I'm not sure it's what we need to do entirely. Marie Kondo would not approve of Bradford Exchange collector's plates, or gnomes, or chickens. I watched a lot of Marie Kondo. She does not like tchotchkes. But sometimes the tchotchkes bring us joy. Sometimes we have to look at the things that bring us joy and let those things bring us joy. And sometimes it doesn't matter if they are things we really need in our life. So embrace the joy. Do not ignore the hardship. Don't turn away from the change that needs to happen. We are that. An intuition, a sliver of God consciousness in our hearts, pointing toward a bigger reality. We are that, says a little acorn, pointing toward an oak tree. We are that, says Buddha, pointing toward the moon. We are that, says Jesus, pointing toward a lamp. We are that, said Martin, said Malcolm, said Ella. We are that, we are that, we are that, wave upon wave upon wave. Poets and prophets pointing agitating, washing over us with waves of love that never forget who we really are, who we could be even in the midst of our endless forgetting. Listen. Listen. Can you hear? Can you feel the waves of love washing over you? Waves of love that remember even now who you are, who we are. Waves of love gently carrying us home. Here in this ocean of love, compassion, care, we offer all of the things we carry in our hearts, all of the things that we would surround in the embrace of this congregation. May the weight of oppression be lightened, may truth be told, may joy break through, and may love make every suffering bearable for us all.
I see.